to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go, we are gonna.
There we are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soul Purpose Lounge. If you missed our first show at 11.
I feel this need to say, welcome to the Soul Purpose Lounge.
Oh, Lord. This is not radio. You have a face for TV, not a face for radio. So if you missed the first show, we were talking about Biden's Veep Pick. And we had a really good conversation. We had two really good guests who we're going to bring in a second. And we talked about all of the potential contenders for the vice presidency, the ticket, the running mate. Thank you. And so we want to bring in our guests. We have Bamitra Salter Liggins and Representative Edna Rain. Can y'all see and hear us?
Good afternoon.
Yes, we can.
Good. How y'all doing?
Good. Living the dream.
Good.
We had a phenomenal show.
We did.
It was a phenomenal show.
We did.
I wanted to just to take a quick second to show to one of our guests. I just happened to be representing. Where's the camera? I just happened to be representing the University of the Vinnick Sport and Entertainment Management Program, USF Mumma College of Business. This is probably the only USF thing that I own, that I allow, that I allow in my house. Look, I don't hate on USF because that's my home school.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up about 10 minutes down the street, but I'm FAMU. Rattler all the way. But in recognition of our most distinguished and honorable guest, I can enjoy my fruity beverage.
Your fruity beverage and a thing.
That's hilarious. But while you're there, let's not forget St. Leo University, and also right here in the Tampa Bay area with the green and gold colors.
And we have Stetson here as well.
That's right.
So
I've gone to nothing but green schools.
I didn't think about that. All of them who have green in their colors.
Yeah.
But Mitra, you went to Christian Brothers. What are their school colors? This has nothing.
Red and white. Red and white. The Buccaneers, men and women of the highest degree.
Oh, right.
So half of the Buccaneers gear that you see me in, people think it's Tampa Bay Bucks, but it's really CBU gear.
so just
I'm actually drinking out of a CBU glass as well.
So just so I'm clear, Benicia, so you had men at the school as well, and they wore red and white too?
Yes, that is correct. Imagine that.
They must have been men of distinction.
Right?
Oh God. Anyway, so if the first show, we ended the first show and we were talking about voting, and we got interrupted by our theme song. And so I wanted, Bamitra, for folks that may have tuned out, we were talking about, I was asking the question about how can we talked about the fact that the African-American demographic and that voting block is of utmost importance in this upcoming election. My question was, how do we get that group excited enough to stand in line? And then you had some.
I would say they don't have to stand in line. Right. There's so many different ways to vote today that can be safe, especially in this COVID environment.
Mm-hmm.
You've got voting by mail, which is huge. And, for those people who are like worried about their vote counting, you can track it to see that your vote can count. Also, for all of the conspiracists out there, the Russia can't mess with your paper ballot, right? So there's you have that. And then right now, and we have early voting that started on Monday, I believe. Yep. It goes on for 2 weeks. There's, I think, 10 or 15 locations around the Tampa Bay metro area.
Right.
And I've been voting early since I was like 19, because Tennessee was one of the first states that had early voting. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. You go on your own time. Yep. You go on the day that works for you when you have the time. I've never stood in line for early voting because I always vote at the county center in whatever area I live in, or my local library, or whatever that may be. And then obviously there's the traditional go vote on election day and, do that. So there's multiple ways to vote, and whatever your jam is and whatever makes you feel most comfortable, but it isn't where you have to go and stand in line on election day. And you'll still get your sticker and be able to represent on social media, if you vote the other way.
Now, Ed, do you do in-person voting? I know when you were running, you definitely voted in person, but do you typically do in-person voting, or do you do absentee?
So I'm an early voter. Voted early this week. Actually, I'll piggyback on what Demetrius said. You actually can have your vote by mail ballot. And for those who are concerned about putting it in the mail, take it to an early voting site. They are outside with a box that you can put that sealed ballot into. And that's how I voted this past week. But historically, for elections, campaigns that I've been involved in, we vote on election day. It's just a good reminder, get out the vote on that Tuesday. But we almost always, as a family, vote early to avoid the lines, to avoid the problems, just to get it done, really. I voted by mail a couple of times, particularly when I was serving in Tallahassee for the municipal elections. And all methods are safe. The drama that was being drummed up was all purely political. And someone grabbed a hold of the president this week from Florida and said, "Hey, man, you're about to cost us an election." And since he, as you've seen via some tweets, he's changed his tune on the state of Florida.
Right.
So I think people forget too, we have 5 states in the union that only vote by mail. Like, you can't go in. This is not a new thing.
Not at all.
Also, what's super confusing about the president is voting by mail has historically been a positive for Republicans. And they're like, oh, have we counted the absentee? We're good, right? So it's almost like he doesn't even understand like what that's a whole different conversation.
And that's why I said somebody grabbed him, because Marco Rubio rebuked him. DeSantis also said, "Hey, look, we don't have problems in Florida." And then next thing you know, he changed his tune. He literally, the advantage that Democrats had in the state, I think it was over 300,000 requests. Yeah. That's a huge number to overcome. So he had to say something.
Yeah. And just so that everybody understands what Ed is saying, there were 300,000 more Democrats that requested absentee ballots this time than Republicans, and that's just unheard of.
Yeah. So this and some vote by mail, vote early. If you can't do either one of those and you're just a purist and you want to vote on election day, just make sure that you make the necessary accommodations to ensure that you can stand in line, because I think the lines are going to be long.
I tell you what, call me if you need a ride to the polls. I'm serious. Like we need
just wear your mask.
Whatever. We need to. We really need to have a grassroots efforts amongst our community, just to make sure that people just get to the polls.
Yeah.
Even if it's hot that day, like we want to make sure that we got bottles of water, to hand people, to umbrellas to hold over the older people. Guys, I don't care what it is. We just need to make sure that we're doing everything.
Keith, that was actually the very first thing I ever did as a volunteer on a campaign. Was I drove senior citizens from nursing homes during early voting in Memphis to the polls. So that's all I did for 2 weeks, is show up. We let them know what day we're going to pick them up in a 15-passenger van. And I spent the whole day going around for 2 weeks to different communities, whether it be a nursing home or a housing project, to get these senior citizens in particular, so that they could go vote in person. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to make sure that we shore that up, because I think that's important to advise folks who are listening now and may listen later about all the different avenues there are to vote now, because there's elections going on in various states currently, and then again in November. So I want to pivot though to the original conversation, which was who Biden is going to pick. And one of the things that I felt, we talked about Representative Clyburn and how Black folks weren't sure who to vote for prior to, or at least gave the impression they weren't sure.
We just had different opinions about who
and then he said, y'all vote for Biden. And then everybody voted for Biden. So then and I seem to recall, correct, my memory does not appear to be the best, but I seem to recall shortly after Biden won the nomination that there was some communication or some comment from Representative Clyburn about the fact that he thought it was important that Biden pick a black VP. Did I mishear that? Did I mishear that?
Yeah, he
Did
said
mishear a word?
He did say that.
Okay.
And let's be clear that the first 4 primaries that Biden was involved in weren't true primaries because of the lack of African American population. And
Right.
he consistently said, when we get to South Carolina, that's my line in the sand, and we'll know whether the campaign is viable from there.
Right.
The caucus system, as we've seen in Iowa, it just doesn't work. It's not representative of the population. And so he was never concerned. South Carolina was a turning point because of Representative Clyburn and what he said. And from there, it was almost as if people had license to, okay, we're going to support Biden this time. And in places where you had more than 28% African Americans, Biden consistently came out on top. So,
and also, I think that people felt that Biden would do well in South Carolina. They didn't realize he was going to mollywop people. Right. And I think that Clyburn was a big lift in that. So, and it would be a different discussion. And I don't think the race would have turned as hard as it did toward Biden if he had marginally won. But because it wasn't just that he won, it was the margin in which he won.
Right.
And Clyburn was a big part of that.
Okay. So because he said that, because I remember him saying that, and Clyburn is gospel in terms of kind of assisting in ensuring that Black folks get out to vote. Why then do you think, because recently he said that it's more important to have a Black woman as a Supreme Court justice versus having a Black woman as a vice presidential running mate. And I was bothered by that because the question I have is, why can't we do both? And so I'm trying to figure out what the shift, there's a shift that appears to be happening in these internal Democratic circles. And I don't profess to be very active and involved in the Democratic Party, but I'm wondering what that shift is, where first we're thinking, yes, African-American women, a woman needs to be on the ticket. And Ed, you alluded to this in the first show. And now the shift is, maybe not, but we definitely want a Supreme Court justice. Can't we have both? Can we do both?
Let's backtrack to what Biden said. When Biden said he was going to pick a running mate, he said he was going to pick a woman. And in a debate, that same debate, he also clarified and was very, very clear about putting an African-American female on the Supreme Court. So I agree with you. He can do both. But if we look at what his comments were months ago, 6 months ago, he said clearly what he was planning to do. Now, Clyburn's comments have come recently. I think back in June is when he said a Black woman, quote, I can't remember the exact date, but that's because you have so many talented Black women to choose from in the political space right now. So it's almost like, well, don't exclude her because you want to do this. I agree. You can absolutely, and he should do both. Because we've been underrepresented. Black women have been underrepresented in both the executive office and on the Supreme Court.
Right. I mean, both is an option, right? It does not have to be either or.
Okay. And because this is a Soul Purpose Lounge, it's real laid back, and we had a child come in, so I have to go close the door now. So take on the conversation.
Yeah, so our child
let him come in. My daughter came in.
Let Miles in.
He's out there watching TV. He wanted his Rice Krispie treat.
Yeah, all this stuff here is
feed the kids. I'm calling DCF. Right? Y'all doing a radio show and the baby ain't eating.
The baby,
come on. And he has a whole lunch meal in there.
That's right. He'll be fine. Listen, here's what I want to do, because Ed, I think that you shared with us that you may have to cut out a little early, but I want to jump into this team Biden-Harris conversation for a second, because I think you made it clear that you are a team Biden-Harris advocate, and I wanted to share with our viewers, I am also team Biden-Harris. And I want to revert back to something that you kind of alluded to earlier when we were sizing up all of the candidates, and there were some detractors for each of them. And one of the issues surrounded Senator Harris and her apparent kind of lack of authenticity. We were trying to figure out kind of what she was. You know what I'm kind of wondering, though? I'm wondering is how much of that was calculated. In other words, was there somebody in her ear saying, Senator, you might wind up being on the ticket. So we don't necessarily need you to be so far left that you this, or so far right that you this, or so far like we just kind of need you to, just not piss anybody off, because there's a good possibility that you may wind up being on the ticket. I'm interested in getting your thoughts on that.
B, you want to grab it?
You can start and then I'll jump in.
So this is what I'll say on that. The authenticity issue that I brought up earlier was because when you look at the very first debate, the missive that was that was sent at Biden over busing in the 70s was highly calculated. They sat down and they researched it, they dug it. I mean, there was even a post video that Harris's camp put out leading up to that. And they went after him knowing he was going to be the front runner. And he was kind of caught off guard by it. And the answer that he gave in typical Biden fashion was a legal answer that for the lawyers made sense, but wasn't a very good political answer. So it looked like he was on the side of segregationists on the busing issue in the 70s. And that gave Kamala a bump. But immediately Biden's camp came out and said, here's what went down and why. And people started to look at Kamala like, damn, you're an opportunist. You planned this. You were trying to, that's not what we're looking for right now. And it's a double standard, because had that been a male that did that, people would have celebrated him for doing it.
Absolutely.
But we have to deal with reality. It was a woman. It wasn't taken too kindly by people in Democratic circles. And that hurt her a little bit, because it looked like she was trying to step on him to prop herself up.
Yeah.
It's hurting her now. I mean, that there's a whole shadow campaign against her for basically saying that she's, too ambitious. She's too much of an opportunist. But let me say this. To submit yourself to run for the president of the United States, you have to have a healthy ego.
Yeah.
Right? You have to believe in yourself in a very mighty way. And to even be considered a viable candidate, you're going to be a bit of an opportunist. And why is that a bad thing? Right. So I remember, I know I use a lot of sports analogies, but I remember watching a sports show and they were having a lot of conversation about touchdown celebrations. And Steve Young said to Michael Irvin, I don't mind when they're spontaneous. It's the calculated ones. Right. Michael Irvin was like, they're all planned. I look at how many games we have. I'll put up 15 touchdown celebrations. I just might do one of those 15. Right. So this is the same thing. It's politics. I don't want a politician that's not ambitious. I don't want a politician that's not calculating. I don't want a politician that's not, just like I don't want a surgeon who's not confident. It's like, we're going to try to take your gallbladder out today. Like, no, I want you to know that we're going to be able to do that. So, but it's seen differently in the package of an African-American female.
Right. And so I want to ask that question, B, why is it that we get that if you're I don't want to say aggressive, but you're assertive, you are you are tenacious, you are outspoken, you are there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, you're opinionated. Why is that seen as a negative? Because it's come out.
We're taught that women should be nice, not powerful, right? So girls are bossy and boys are leaders. Girls are passionate. I mean, men are passionate and girls are aggressive, right? Yeah. We're taught that since we were children. And then if you add a layer of being an African American, it's like you're out of place. Like you're not really in your place. Like it's okay for you to have the ambitions that we see for you, right? So it's the same thing in our jobs, right? They're like, okay, you want to be in wealth management? No, you want to run 5 retail banking branches. You're like, but I want to be a wealth. No. We're going to promote you. We're not going to give you advancement. Not the same thing, right? So that's what Senator Harris is struggling with. It does not help her that she has done some things in her personal life that feeds into that narrative, right? And so again, it's a combination of her behavior coupled with perception of what women should do, how they should do things, what's appropriate. And a lot of that is be nice. Nobody ever tells a man to be nice.
Right.
They're like, go win, not be nice.
Well, I'll tell you that when I
want to come back to something. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I don't want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
But, Keith, to answer your question about whether or not somebody got to her at some point, believe you me, that was also a part of the calculation, because she dropped out pretty early. So, you know, you always have in these large campaigns, pollsters and people that are looking at the future. And based off of the feedback, they did not see a credible path for her. So you have to think that when people drop out, it's not always like, well, I can't win. It's more, it doesn't look like I'm going to win, and I still want to have a say-so in how things turn out. So if I get out now, you still got to come to California. You're still going to need Black votes. You're still going to need female votes. I could be one of the premier surrogates if you learn how to play ball with me. So trust me when I tell you, that was a part of the calculations for her dropping out early, because I think you and I had talked about it when she made the announcement. It was like, dang, you're not even going to try South Carolina?
You're not even going to South Carolina where the Black people are.
Like,
we haven't got to your people.
We don't know.
So let me ask this question, and I know Bamitra is a Keisha Lance Bottoms supporter in terms of being on the ticket, but she hasn't gotten as much vitriol as Kamala has, and from us, right? And so I know in the primary season that bothered me a lot, because I thought it had multiple layers. I thought it was the fact that she wasn't Black enough, which we talked about in the first hour. Despite the fact that she went to an HBCU as a part of a Greek little organization, et cetera, et cetera. Then you had this conversation about her personal life, which to me is frankly irrelevant, because we know who we got in the White House now. And then there was this, but most of the vitriol came from Black men. There were some Black women too, but a lot. And then there's this level of misogyny. So you have all these different layers of people just coming at Kamala. I don't see the same thing happening with Keisha or any of the other candidates, any of the people vying, frankly. Yeah. And I'm wondering what it is about her that has so many people, us primarily, gunning for her like this. And I don't know if y'all have given it any thought, but to me, it's striking that you have this really rich list of people. And maybe it's because she's the front runner, but we are coming for her, gunning for hard.
Well, is it really us on the internet? I mean, let's remember, you've got a misinformation campaign coming from China, and it's from Russia. That's, all these props and these troll accounts that are saying all these things and fueling conversations.
Good point.
Two, I'll say this. Kamala did not get the support she could have gotten it in that campaign, and a lot of that fell on her, because in politics you want to either define yourself or you're going to be defined by your opponents. Kamala could not figure out which version she needed to be, and she got defined by her opponents, which is she is not a liberal. She is anti any type of real criminal justice reform. Look at her record. She does not really care about Black people. She's only half Black. She's married to a white man. All this nonsense. In fact, I'll push back on it's Black men. I've seen more posts on Facebook. One as recently as this past week from a Black woman that basically said Kamala was not Black enough to be considered.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And so I think that you're absolutely right. Like, that's what I was saying. She's supposed to check off all of these, as I call it, the blackety black boxes, and then yet she gets like asterisks next to all of that. Right. And it's because but her husband is not Black. But this, that, and the other. And then she doesn't come out and say, no, I'm Black.'s like, well, I'm a person of color. Then that annoys me, right? And so she's not helping herself. Whereas Keisha Lance Bottoms, first of all, she's strong, but she's not assertive. She's got almost like that quiet strength,
That southern strength, my mama likes to call it.
Right. Like, even when she's giving it to Governor Kemp, she's like, I don't know what he's doing. Did y'all notice that he didn't mess with Savannah? He didn't mess with the mayors of Savannah, but she's not. He didn't mess with the mayors of Savannah, right? So even this week, she's like, Trump is delusional. I don't know, like no one but it's not angry. It's just more a matter of fact. So I think she's a little softer, and then she doesn't have any asterisks, right? She's married to a Black man, right? She's not calling herself a person of color. And she's like, yes, not only did I go to fam, I'm a Rattler. And then she would have on a Rattler mask while she's in a press conference, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're seeing Senator Harris in a bunch of HU gear. She's not so it's very different in the way that they carry it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
She's also not a national figure yet. Because
True.
believe you me, the minute she's elevated to a national platform, the same stupid, ridiculous, who's blacker than who conversation is going to pop up.
Right.
We can't help ourselves. And it's so funny because we've never seen a who's white enough conversation for a position.
Well, here's the other thing, Ed. Only like 38% of Americans have a college degree, right?
True.
So if you start putting Black people in that, we're probably in the teens. So why are we dissecting ourselves by division within educated Black people? And it's not just in this vice presidential conversation. We do it in everyday life. I mean, I went and played golf a couple of weeks ago, played with some guys I'd never met. As soon as I showed up, they were like, did you go to an HBCU? I'm like, man, I ain't even pulled my clubs out yet. Like, what does it matter? You know, like what? So we don't have time for that. And especially when we're trying to beat Trump, there is no time for that.
Yeah. And so it's a distraction. It's fundamentally a distraction. So if you have a question,
I didn't have a question. I'm really enjoying this this dialogue around Senator Harris, and I really would like to explore more, especially in this setting, some of the other candidates, especially Susan Rice, because I know that she's kind of the the latest kind of darling of the interweb, but Senator Harris still intrigues me a little bit because I think Ed touched on it. I'm not talking to a lot of guys that are going, well, no, Senator Harris, like we don't like her, especially Black guys. Like, oh, well, we don't like her because of this, and we don't like her because of that. I do think that we may be experiencing a little bit of kind of reverse colorism as well, because
that's real.
It's easy to get us during this period of being pro-blackity black. It's easy to get us to say, not only is she fair skinned, but she's got the multicolored eyes, and she's got the white husband, and she's half Jamaican and half whatever. Let's just throw that little kind of thing in the mix too, to get them to start fighting over who's the blackest of the black. And to your point, Bamitra, if we can get y'all talking about not that she's AK, we can get y'all talking about not that she went to Howard, not that she is a Lincoln. Like, if we can get y'all talking about that, then maybe we can just kind of make her the unpopular light-skinned person in the
now everybody's back in third grade.
Hi, yellow. Yeah.
Well, we have to think about this too, right? If we just looked at the qualifications, and these ladies we're talking about had male names next to their resumes, who would be the pick? And so I like to think that, someone that's a U.S. senator that has been an attorney general for the second largest state in the country, or the largest, depending on the day, that's worked their way up through the system, an attorney, it's just, to me, it's some of the stuff we use to talk about and divide ourselves with are just so nonsensical. I want to know what your qualifications are, and can you do the job? I don't care where you went to school, unless you went to a diploma mill. I don't care what your husband looks like. Can you do the job? We've got to think about that. Now, Biden's camp has to think about electoral politics. Can this person help you win? Right? Forget all that swing state stuff. It doesn't matter. 4 states decided the presidency in 2016: Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, and Ohio. Okay. Can this person help me in those states? Maybe, maybe not. What matters is, if something happens to Biden, if he's elected, can this person lead the country as the president?
Right.
That's my basic.
I think Ed is spot on. And just to address one of the comments, we did do this to Obama, right? We definitely struggled with is he Black enough? Oh, he's Black enough because Michelle gives him street cred. So that definitely happened. I mean, Tavis Smiley and Cornel West just lambasted that dude for not being Black enough. It's a Black State of the Union. So we.
But I will. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, but Ed is right. The vice president job as a candidate is to complement Biden and to help him in areas where he may not be as strong. And right now, that means who is going to get Joe Citizen in small town, Michigan, and Cindy Citizen in small town, Pennsylvania, excited enough to come out and vote for the ticket. Because here's the thing that no one likes to talk about. The Black people are going to vote for Biden. It does not, we're just hoping that he doesn't gaff it up enough to mess up. Now he tries, we're like, please just be quiet enough. Like, he did it this week, unlike the Black people, Hispanic people are not monolithic. You're like, no, don't say that. Right.
Stop. Right.
So you're not, so you need, so to Ed's point, you're going to get the bulk of us. Right. But you need us excited to get over that, to get to that 65%. So you can't pick somebody that we're like, oh, that's a dud. That's why I don't think Karen Bass is helpful. She's a dud, right? Yeah. It's not about qualification. She doesn't have any excitement around her. So the other thing is, so outside of Black people, how are you going to get the rest of the, middle America, Joe Citizen to be Team Biden? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And so based on that, I agree with that. And I just want to backtrack for a second. I agree Obama did get that. He's not Black enough, but I think the difference is that he had Michelle. I think Michelle was an asset for him because arguably, he didn't have a Black experience growing up. Let's just be clear. He didn't have not until he was older, right? So I think there's a little bit of a difference there, but notwithstanding that. So now that you've given all the qualifications about what Joe is looking for, someone's going to excite the base to get out. We've already talked about the fact that we need 65% of Black folks. That's the number. Mm-hmm. We got to get 65% of Black folks out to vote. Who that is vying for this position and he's considering, because he's making his selection this week.
Yeah. Tomorrow they're saying, right.
Tomorrow, right. Okay. So tomorrow. So this is a perfect show. So of the folks that we talked about today, who is going to get him that 65%? Because there's negatives about everybody. So we understand that we have to get the folks in the Midwest space. We got to get Michigan. We got to get Pennsylvania, Ohio. So you have to be able to speak to Cindy Smith at the kitchen room table. That's a blue collar worker that may not have a lot of Black friends, but I'm gonna vote for Biden. I'm not too sure about this VP pick, but I like him. Who's gonna be that? Who is that person?
So do we want to talk about some other stuff like fundraising? Because
listen,
your VP,
we got time.
Yeah, your VP also has to be a good fundraiser right now. At the end of the day, I don't know that Karen Bass is going to come in and raise a bunch of money. I don't know that Susan Rice is going to be able to raise a bunch of money, but we know that Kamala Harris has nationally toured this country running for president and raised enough money to be credible. So I think it's going to be her, at least I think if it's electoral politics in terms of getting people excited. So we'll see.
I also think that that's why the list is long, because they all bring different things to the table, right? Like, as I mentioned earlier, Duckworth is from the Midwest. She's from Illinois. She's a veteran. That brings a whole different demographic of folks to be excited. We've never had a female veteran on the ticket. We haven't had a veteran since John McCain, right? Val Dimmings is from Florida. She has a law enforcement background. As we mentioned, that's both positive and negative. No one can match Susan Rice's international experience, her what she would be to help us internationally. We clearly have lots of work to do internationally with the way that the country is seen. So there's a reason why we're not just talking about 3 people or 5 people. There's a reason why we're talking about 10 people, right? Because there's so many different things that each of them bring. And if you could just take this piece from this person, and put it all together, but that's not how the world works. And then the last thing that we haven't even discussed during this 1230 show is age, because the idea that Vice President Biden will more than likely not be a 2-term president. He might not even finish his first term for many reasons. Age matters as well, right? Because that person could very well be the next president of the United States. So there's a reason why the list is long, right?
Right. Go ahead.
I want to make a quick comment about Val Dimmings, and I saw one of our viewers, Lavia Davis, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing the first name right, but asked a question about Val Dimmings.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just interject. I really like what we're talking about with respect to fundraising. Just for a moment, I got invited to a Val Dimmings fundraiser. I didn't know Val Dimmings from a can of paint. This was admittedly a few years ago, and but I showed up and she came, it was a very, very kind of a typical, fundraiser, smaller venue. And then she got up and then she talked and she worked the room and she shook everyone's hand and she looked them in the face and she applied, and she was just enough, had the girlfriend, factor, but not so much to where it was off-putting or whatever. And I wound up contributing to her campaign. And I'm saying that to say, Val Dimmings, in my opinion, even though she's not had to go on the national stump, is somebody that, based on her DST, based on her, her appearance, based on that square jaw, that I was a former cop, don't get it twisted, I've got these heels on, but I can go I think she plays in a lot of communities. Yeah. And I wouldn't take that off of the table.
Well, I'll say this, and somebody just mentioned it in the chat room. Ed mentioned this in the first hour. I never thought about it, but I've met Val. She's to your point. She's extremely approachable. Mm-hmm. Very, very nice. I think she's tough. She's tough. You can tell that she doesn't take any crap. Mm-hmm. But she is approachable. She's warm. Like, she has this warm feeling. Kamala is not. I've never met her, but Kamala, I think she probably is warm, but she don't give that warm feeling. Not the first. Not the initial. I like her. I don't necessarily think you need to be warm to govern. I mean, that's frankly, I think you need to get the job done. But he mentioned about her running for governor, and somebody else mentioned that. I'm all for that. If somebody can convince her to run for the governor of the state of Florida, I'll stand out on a sign in the heat and hold a sign to say vote Val Dimmings for governor, because I think that's a good fit.
I think that happens, Monica. Yeah. Which is why I said it earlier. She may not get the nod for the VP, because I just don't believe in the swing state theory of a vice presidential pick. But if she's not looking at running against Ron DeSantis with the COVID response and now the issue with the schools and the return to work for the teachers, I think it's a mistake. She not only carries a third of the Democratic base in a primary if she were to run, she actually wins that presidential election, because I don't think certain mistakes get made. The Panhandle won't support her, but she's coming from Orange County, who's married to the mayor of Orange County.
You wouldn't need the Panhandle to win.
Exactly. It's a wrap.
I think that her profile being raised as an impeachment manager and now being on the short list for the vice president is it would be silly for her not to seriously consider running for governor, right? And let me say this: I would not have said that in January.
Right.
Her profile is exponentially higher. I also think that some of the things that hurts her as a law enforcement officer nationally helps her in Florida.
Absolutely,
it helps her in Florida, right? And so she will have her counterparts that will be able to stand up and say, no, as fellow chiefs of police, we did this together, and this, that, and the other. So I think that she should absolutely be in the gubernatorial conversation. And if not, I stand by my thought she would make a fabulous FBI director or director of Homeland Security. So I think
that's good. So
here's the other thing.
Their roles in the administration.
I want to revisit some of
those. So for our viewers, because we have a lot of viewers some viewers out there. I'm posing this question. I did the poll, but I know what the poll results are now. But I'll do my own mental math to kind of figure out how that changes. But I want people who are in our watching to let us know in the chat room who you're supporting and who you like to see as Biden's VP pick. But go ahead.
Let me throw this out to this distinguished panel, because I've heard a lot of this person would make a good this and this person would make a good that, and it really kind of starting to feel like we're getting ready to take all of this talent and we're going to put it in these roles, in the administration. When I'm thinking, this is was it Denzel Washington in Training Day? He said this is chess, not checkers.
I don't know. I haven't seen this.
So watch this though. You've got Keisha Lance Bottoms staying in Georgia. You've got Val Dimmings staying in Florida. You've got this individual staying in California. You've got this individual. Like, what's so bad about putting a Biden Warren ticket together to win the White House, and then start filling the Supreme Court, and then start winning these other states, and then start, quite frankly, flipping the Senate and working to flip the Senate.
You said Biden Warren?
Biden Gretchen Whitmer.
Okay.
Because here's the thing. We've said, and I want to come back to Biden's comment that he made this week. We've already said Black folks, including Black women, are going to vote the Biden ticket. They're certainly not going to vote the Trump ticket. They're going to vote the Biden ticket. And so if you got all these bullets that you can use in different places, why are you necessarily putting them in the big?
No, you're right. They're not going to vote the Trump ticket. But if you choose a candidate that is a dud, they won't vote at all. Right. So they stay home. Right. So that, I mean, we saw that happen with John Kerry and John Edwards. Like, no one was just, I mean, it was like a snooze. Right. So you can't have a ticket that's a snooze. You need people to be excited. And then the other thing is 2 70-plus-year-old white people running together is not what we need, right? Mm-hmm. Warren is in her 70s, Joe Biden is in his 70s, and you talk about people, just all you're going to get is the diehards, the people like the four of us who don't ever miss an election. Right. But you're not going to get that casual voter to come out for that ticket, and we need the casual voter to come out and vote. Go ahead, Ed. I see you.
I've got just a few more minutes before I have to jump, but I just want to say this. There's this old adage, Bill Clinton said it years ago, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. We saw that when DeSantis was chosen by Trump and beat Adam Putnam a couple years ago for the governorship. Republicans who were like, I can't stand the idea of my golden boy Adam Putnam not getting this, fell in line and voted for him. Democrats, we always want to love or be excited about the candidate. I wish that weren't true, but it is. And so what the Biden camp needs to consider is they need to be bold with the pick in terms of somebody that will generate the excitement. Now, I'm going to say this, and I want y'all to hold me to this. It's on the record, okay? If my pick and Kamala Harris is not selected, I'm probably going to cry for an hour. Then I'm going to get over it. And I'm going to go out there and work, whether it's Karen Bass, or is Gretchen Whitmer, or whomever the VP is. The problem, however, will be what Demetra said earlier. Will African-American voters be as excited with that ticket that doesn't have a black face on it? And I will tell you, Democrats consistently, with the exception of the election of President Obama in 2008 and then his re-election in 2012, they have consistently broken my heart. Because, conventional logic, all the things we discussed on the first show says Harris should be the person. I'm not making that bet. Okay.
I'm not either.
I am fully prepared for an announcement this week that has Tammy Duckworth as the VP. But I want Black people to know that no matter what, the threat that Donald Trump has been, the number of federal judges that have been placed that are going to change the makeup of this country for the next 30 to 40 years is such a threat to this republic that I don't care if Joe Biden's running mate is a donkey. I am going to be voting for Joe Biden. Period.
Voting and working for him. The other thing that I would say before it has to sign off is this, and I say this all the time: one day of voting prevents months of protests. Right. And so white women saw that with Hillary Clinton. I'm like, okay, y'all didn't vote for her, and then y'all were having these more. If they had just voted for Hillary Clinton, right? I mean, I'm like, I don't want to go to a protest. I want everybody to go vote. And then we get stuff done. Literally, so this, and then the other thing I would say is we have to stop looking for perfection out of our candidates. That's why I said the list is long. Each of them has good things. Each of them have things, opportunities, things to work on. There are no perfect people. Joe Biden is not a perfect candidate, right? We're not going to get a perfect vice presidential pick. So we need to stop looking for perfection within our candidate pool, and that hurts us, right? Because then we're like, well, he doesn't have this, she doesn't have this, and blah blah blah, so I'm not interested and I'm out. That's not what we need to do, because the stakes are so much higher than how you feel. right?
Yeah.
It's about our children and our property, our access to opportunity, our access to capital, how we're treated,
Yeah.
police reform. So we have all these things and they all matter. We don't have 15 different priorities. We have 15 number one priorities.
Yeah.
So we can't look for perfection. That's my biggest thing.
The old
Thank
Greek
you,
saying,
Ed.
don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's get
Thank
this
you,
done.
Ed.
Hey, thank you guys. I'm sorry I have to run.
That's okay. Thanks so
Not
much
at
for
all.
joining us.
No problem. Have a great afternoon.
You
You
too.
too, man.
So, Demetra, I want to follow up because Ed kind of answered the question that I was going to ask. We talked about in the first hour the fact that Black women have won elections. They won elections for Doug Jones. We got him elected in Alabama, and we have consistent. If you look at the statistics in terms of the percentage of Black women that vote every election, it's like 90 something. We vote more than everybody else. We are
more liberal.
Right, we're steady and sure, and I think a part of that is because we're so pragmatic, right? We're looking at we're not necessarily need to fall in love with you, but we're looking at the bigger picture, which is how is this person going to impact my community? So there was a really good discussion that Angela Rye led a couple days, maybe Tuesday night. It was talking. I remember everybody was on. There was a lot of phenomenal Black women on there, and the conversation was whether or not, why is it that Black women have to wait, right? Why is it that we can't demand the Supreme Court justice position? Why we can't also demand the VP position? Why can't we demand a significant cabinet position? Why do we have to pick and choose? Why do we pick and choose? Isn't it time? I mean, don't you believe, since we're the most loyal voting bloc, isn't it time that we demand that we have a seat at the table?
So I'm going to say something that's not popular, but it's going to be factual, okay? Because we are the most loyal voting bloc, we don't make people have consequences for not giving us what we want. And we have never turned that voting bloc into money, right? So even with white women, they started Emily's List for that reason. Early money is like yeast. And then it raises the dough. It was about money, right? And then every other state did the same thing and came up with their own version of Emily's List. You know, you've got Ruth's List here in Florida. I think it's Kay's List in Texas. My point is they turn the block of being a white woman voting block into dollars to help women candidates, right? If we turn our block into money, money is power, and money gets you a seat at the table, and money makes people listen to you, right? So because then you can say, hey, we've got this, and these are the consequences for not rolling with us. There are no consequences for ticking off Black women. All we're going to do is talk to each other and say how we're disrespected and this is not right. But we've got to put that enthusiasm and that consistency to money. We have them. And again, Black people are not taught to donate to political campaigns. We're taught to give to church, right? We're like, oh wait, it's not tax deductible. Or I've heard these are things I've heard people say, it's not tax deductible. I don't even live in that district. And you're like, okay, but they're going to vote on laws for your state. They're going to vote on laws for our country. So we have to learn to turn our voting block into money. That's why we can't demand things.
So because I will tell you now, I'm with Ed. If he doesn't pick, whether it's Harris or not, I just fundamentally want a Black woman on that ticket because I think we are deserving of it. That's just my particular position. People may differ. I think we're deserving of it. But to Ed's point, if he picks a donkey or if he picks our dog to run for him, I'm voting for Biden. Just
or one of the
so Monica, what broke me from being like, we need a Black person to do this, we need a Black person to do that, is because you and I are the same age. And remember when Thurgood Marshall died in the mid-90s? And we were like, he better replace him with a Black person.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah, he did.
Clarence Thomas. So for me, I'm like, let's make sure we get. It's not just Clarence Thomas is Black skinned.
Yeah. He's kinfolk, but he's not kinfolk.
Right. So I'm like, I tell you what, I wouldn't want, there are certain Black women that I wouldn't want to see be vice president, but they're Black skinned. Don't want them.
Good
Because they're
point.
not going to help us.
Good point. Good point.
So listen, so I wanted to stir the pot a little bit this week, and posted the Joe Biden quote from the interview that he did just the day before yesterday or the day before that. And that quote was during that interview is, by the way, and I'm gonna quote it exactly because I don't want to mess it up. He says, by the way, what you all know, and he was talking to a Latino group.
Mm-hmm.
What you all know, but most people don't, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. And I challenged those who read that post to say, okay, take 24 hours if you need to, but find the lie in that comment. And what I found is a couple of people kind of had some issue with the substance of it. But it almost sounds like we were more upset that he said it than he was telling a lie. I'm still trying to find.
But that's kind of like when he was on the Breakfast. I got some heat from saying this when he was on the Breakfast.
Breakfast show, yeah.
And he said when he was having a conversation with Charlemagne the God, he's talking about Trump, and he said, "Look, if you black and you really gonna vote for Trump, or if you're voting for Trump, these are the options.
For me,
if you don't vote for me, then you're not black."
And I'm like,
I said, okay. I understand why people are upset because you the uncle we invited to the cookout and you don't have the liberty to say that. But where was the lie?
There was no lie.
Where was the lie? There's nothing that Trump has done that has benefited black people. I mean, let's be legit. Let's be real. No. So I don't know. I mean, Misha may have a different viewpoint, but I do disagree. I do think the black community is incredibly diverse, and we talked about that a little bit earlier in the show, just talking about HBCUs versus PWIs, and are you from the north? Are you from the south? Like what church do you go to? I mean, we have like 1,800 denominations, and we talk about white people talk about black church like there's one denomination. Like the CME church is nothing like the Pentecostal church, and not even close, right? So we are incredibly diverse, but we don't speak of ourselves in that way, only within our community. And so outside of our community, because we understand that we don't have time to divide ourselves into small groups when we're having a bigger conversation. And so because of that, folks outside of our race don't realize how diverse we are within it. Does that make sense? I mean, I've been in meetings where a white politician has said something about a black leader that we all agree with. And then we're like, well, I don't want to say that in front of a white person, but we think they're terrible. We think they're terrible. And then after the white politician leaves, we're like, yeah, but I'm like, no. So that's our fault. Yeah, right? I think that we're afraid because there's so few black folks in elected positions that when someone that looks like us does something that's messed up and that they should be taken to task for it, we are hesitant to critique our own. Right now, right. I think that you critique every politician. If I have elected you to do a job and you are not doing your job, whether you're white, purple, black, or green, I'm going to hold you accountable. Now, I will say that I hold black folks that I've voted for and given money to a higher standard. That's just me, because my expectation is that you gonna do something, you gonna do things differently, and when you get in, you're not gonna be swayed by the pressures of what's politically expedient. I recognize that that's not always the case, but I think that we should hold people accountable. Now, you can't come out your mouth speaking any kind of way. So Biden was wrong for saying what he said because you can't get that comfortable. But right. The content of what he said was not a lie.
And also, I mean, if I'm over to you guys' house for dinner and, Keith's like, Monica, you made a great meal, and he pats you on the behind, I don't think that I get to pat you on the behind just because he did that, right? So with Biden, you're like, what are you doing?
Right. Right.
All you can say is great meal, Monica, and maybe a high five, right? Like you don't get to do that. So that's where Biden's just a little, but we know that he's prone to gaffes, right?
Yeah.
That's just who he is.
He is, and I'm glad. And Stephen is asking some really kind of pointed questions. we have a tendency to hold him to the same standard, even when we understand kind of the context by which he's saying these things.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a tendency to hold him to the same standard as kind of the popular media. When I was one of the people going, don't come out the next day and start walking it back like you didn't really mean to say it. Like, I think what he was trying to say, he was pandering to the Latino community. He was pandering by saying, I understand the nuances within your community that are very, very, very varied, because, half of y'all claim you Democrats sometimes, and half of y'all claim you Republicans sometimes, half of you claim to be conservative. If I talk to you about the difference between Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and Cubans, then I start getting all of these arguments. Yeah. So he was really trying to appreciate kind of the diversity of the Latino community. When you come into our community,
had he done that and not done it in comparison to the Black community,
right,
would have been fine. Where he went wrong is to compare it versus
absolutely.
Left it there.
But he's Uncle Joe Gaff, so we understand that's what he's going to do. So I know that you are Keisha Lance Bottom, and I know we've talked a lot about Senator Harris because that's kind of where we are. But you are accustomed to being the minority in your positions at times. Let's just say accustomed to, but you hold firm to your position. So give us your position, or make the case for Keisha Lance Bottoms to be. And I know there's lots of other people out there, but y'all ain't on the show, and the people that we support, Harris and Keisha Lance Bottoms.
And can I pile on to your question and give the case for 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Uncle Joe says, I've had a heart failure, whatever. I can't, go on or whatever. And now Keisha Lance Bottoms is in line to be the president of the United States, because that's it's a very realistic possibility.
So I will say a couple things. I know we're in Florida. We probably have some rattlers. So if y'all know her, tag her and tell her that I'm a stand for her. Hey, girl. But no, all jokes aside, again, she actually has executive experience. I mean, she's the mayor of Atlanta. She is the mayor of a city that most people think is the largest, most cosmopolitan city in the Southeast. All right. And so that's not like being the mayor of Memphis or being the mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas. Nothing against those cities, but they're not Atlanta from an economic perspective, cosmopolitan perspective. In terms of getting the base excited, that we talked about Black women on here, people, as Ed said, they're not just going to be excited about Keisha Lance Bottoms. They are going to go work for her, vote for her. Right. I mean, because and everybody, most Black women can see themselves in Keisha Lance Bottoms. They're like, oh, I'm also an HBCU grad. I'm a mother. I'm a Link. I'm a Delta. Whatever it may be. So she has kind of that Me Too factor. And then she is younger, Keith, to your point. She's only 50 years old, right? So, those are the things that, you can see. The experience that she would get, even with a year under her belt as vice president, or 18 months under her belt, certainly 4 years, she's going to grow leaps and bounds like we all do when we get an opportunity to stretch our leadership opportunities professionally. So there's this myth that women need to have 100% of a skill set in order to get a job. Whereas if it was a man, we're like, he can grow into that and have 60%. So does she have some shortcomings with international policy? Sure. But can she grow into that? Absolutely. She could grow into that. And we wouldn't even be discussing this if she was even a Black man. We'd be like, okay, it's fine. Right? Yep. So I think that those are all the good things. But I do want to say, as much as I am pro Keisha Lance Bottoms, none of the folks that are on the list are bad choices. I said, they all bring, there's nobody on the list that I'm like, oh my goodness, that person is horrible. They're going to hurt us. There are people that I'm like, I don't think folks will be as excited about, but there's no bad folks on his short list they could all be, good vice presidents.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect thing to close on. I wish I could show our poll. So we did our poll, and before the show, I took a look at it, and it looked like the two top choices for folks that decided to participate in the poll were Kamala Harris and Representative Dimmings.
Mhm.
And Keisha did get some votes. Bamitra would be happy to know.
Okay, we're in Florida. I understand.
Well, we have people from all, we have national people, we have people from other states viewing. But by and large, the winner was, it don't matter who he's picked, I'm still voting for Biden. So that won overwhelmingly. So I think at the end of the day, we'll find out, I guess, tomorrow who his selection is. I think at the end of the day, as Bamitra and Ed said, all of the folks that he has to pick from bring something to the table. Some may be more exciting to others than some may be more exciting to people than others. But at the end of the day, the goal should be singular, and that is to get the current occupant out and to put Biden and whomever is on his ticket in the White House in November. And that requires us to be motivated, to be engaged, to be energized, and to vote.
And so to close this out, I just want to say, Bamitra, we've known each other for years. We count it not robbery that you would take time out of your schedule to come and hang out with us. We get, between 1,000 and 3,000, 4,000, sometimes up to 4,000 views of these rebroadcasts, throughout the coming weeks. And what we hope we've done is really given people some things to think about, and to encourage you to kind of do your own research and to get more background on these candidates. And we also hope that we've encouraged you to vote and to get active in this election, because it's extremely important. So, Bamitra, we appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man.
Thank you so much.
And you know what, audience? Please go to Soul Purpose Show, our Facebook page. We are heard on In Touch News, internet radio, obviously around the world. But we also encourage you to make comments and like us and share with your friends as well.
Oops, I'm sorry, Bamitra. I did, Lord Jesus, I'm sorry. Listen, look, I done covered a face up because I'm sorry. It wasn't how I apologize.
So anyway, fortunately, we're on Facebook Live. This is going to be the first in a series of these conversations leading up to the election, because it's too important for us to not have these conversations.
Yeah.
So if you have questions about the election, things that even about candidates that you don't understand, we'll put Ed and Bamitra to work, and we'll research those topics.
We're gonna have to do this again after he makes the pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll absolutely invite y'all back. The other thing I want to encourage people to do, we're a little over time, but it's whatever, is remember that there are down ballot races in some states.
For sure. Right?
So it's not just the presidential election, which is of utmost importance, but there are some House seats across the country that are up. There are some senatorial seats. I don't know if the Senate, I know there's Senate seats up for sure. I'm not sure about House. Yeah. But there are House seats too. House seats up. Yeah. There are senatorial seats up. There is a sister, Bamitra, running for Senate in Tennessee out of Memphis. So I've reached out to her because I want to get her on the show to talk to her, because I'm excited about her. We
can do that. We can definitely get her.
Yeah. So, but thank you very much. Y'all have a phenomenal Saturday. We will do this again. Bamitra will reach out to you once he makes his pick, and try to get you and Ed back on the.
Stay safe. Wear your mask.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Appreciate y'all.
Love
we'll
y'all.
See you next week.
See you later.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe.